This is a quick walkthrough of the operation of a 25 Yamaha 4-stroke. This is a F25SWHC C model, meaning it's the newer model with the fuel injection. The engine has electric start on this model, and it also has the pull start. Down in the front of the motor there is a oil light and a overheat light. Both of those will come on briefly when you start the engine, just to show that they're working, and then essentially you should not see them again anytime during the time you're running it. If those lights, either of those lights, were to come on with it running, there is also an RPM reduction built into the motor, so that as you're going, you're probably not turning around looking at these lights all the time. But if a light was to come on, the engine will cut down in power, so you'll know something's going on with it. At which point you can go back and look and see which light is on. If the coolant or overheat light is on, then you'd want to check for the water flow coming off the side, the back corner of the motor, and check your lower unit, the water inlets for any obstructions or anything like that, or weeds, debris gets caught in them. You've got some weeds on the boat here, so it's certainly a possibility depending on where you go. The oil light, you would want to check the oil level, stop the engine, check the oil level. And to do that, there's a dipstick here on the starboard side of the motor. It should be right up to the top of those crosshatch marks on there. The oil capacity on this engine is listed at 1 quart. There's a chart on top of the timing belt cover. To add oil, it goes into here on the back of the valve cover, and then there's a filter, spin-on filter on the side of the motor here. A couple other things while we're under the cover. There's a fuse for the electric start. To access that, you squeeze this tab, pull it back, and in there are two 20-amp fuses. One of them is in use, and the other one is a spare. And down here on the side there is that white fuse puller, so you can go in, pull out the fuse, change it if necessary. So if you go to start the engine with the start button on the front here and it's not doing anything, I would check that fuse. Also verify that your shift control is in neutral. And that is true for pull starting as well. It will not pull out if it's not in neutral. It is a 2-cylinder motor, 2 spark plugs here on the back. On the front here is a fuel filter, and if you can see down in the bottom there is a red ring. That is a water indicator, so that should be all the way down at the bottom. If you see that floating up towards the green, that means there's water in that filter. We do recommend using 91 octane non-ethanol fuel, especially the non-ethanol portion of that. The motor itself does not require the higher octane, but it's you want to use non-ethanol whenever you can. Back around here in the front there is the safety lanyard that has to be hooked up in order to run the motor. That pulls off here. This also is your stop button, so with this connected, that would be how you would stop the motor. There is a throttle friction device right there as well, and then also all these motors do have the variable trolling speed system on it, so when the motor's warmed up, you can raise and lower the RPMs of it in 50 RPM increments. So it generally, most motors, it will go down to about 600. The 25 probably doesn't go quite that low, and then up to 1100. And the system will stay at whatever RPM you set it at until you get above 2000 RPM. So if you stay below that number, it will be at the higher idle setting. if you shut the motor off, it will reset, or if you go up above 2500, it will reset. On the front end here, there is a steering friction lever. So if you pull it towards this side, it will lock the motor. Towards the center, it's more loose. Your 2 clamp screws here. And then this is the release lever for the tilt. So to tilt the motor up, flip the handle up, make sure your tiller handle is clear, and then you can go ahead and pick up the motor. It will stop at a intermediate setting there. There's actually 2 of those, and then you can go all the way up. There is also a final trim pin setting. It's in the second hole up right now. To move that, you would just straighten out this arm, pull it across, lower it down, and then the motor will rest on that in the down position. To get the motor back down from where it is, flip that lever down, pick up on the motor, and then it'll set at the low position there. The fuel tank on this, all these new fuel tanks use a pressurized venting system, so that the vent only will allow vapor out or in after the tank has reached a certain pressure. So the vent is closed when it's like that. This is only for transporting the tank, say to go get it filled if it's in your car or something. The rest of the time, basically you want the vent open, but it will vent as needed throughout the day. We do recommend that when the tank is not in use, that you crack the fuel cap, disconnect the fuel. Sorry, hard to do this with one hand here. And the reason you're disconnecting or cracking the cap is to release the pressure in the tank. And then we recommend storing the tank inside, or if the boat's not going to be covered, out of the sun, out of the weather, out of the rain, so that it's not getting hit by the elements all the time. So same thing goes when you go to reconnect the fuel hose. Again, release the pressure in the tank, clip that on. You do also want to make sure that your arrow is pointing towards the engine for fuel flow. That should basically cover the operation of the 25 horse Yamaha.